Bill Kraft.
And we're Giant Slayer Consulting. And we're really excited today to talk to you about the law of timing. All these lessons are great. And each week I say this is my favorite lesson. I don't know if I really have any favorites. I just like them all because they're so powerful. It's really good. Our lesson is taken from John Maxwell's The 21 Laws of Leadership. And 21 principles in here for anybody who wants to increase their influence and improve their influence. And too many times we think about leadership as a title or position. But we've been teaching through this series about the 5 levels of leadership. And the leadership, what is leadership really, Bill?
Leadership is influence.
Influence. It's nothing more, nothing less. You can have a position and a title, but if no one's following you, you might just be taking a walk. And I love that teaching from John, because a lot of times we can't understand why people are not following us. It's because our influence isn't. We're not influencing them to move into action. A lot of times we kind of repel them, even though our intentions are good. I don't think any leader ever wakes up in the morning and says, "I'm going to be a bad leader." What do you think, Bill?
No, I think that everyone wants to be a good leader, but sometimes we don't know how, and we don't realize where we're actually falling short of the mark.
And and I think the best leader is the one who says, "I don't have all the answers, but I'm going to get the answers. I'm going to learn and grow, and I'm going to help empower those around me and lift up leaders too." And that takes us back to a couple of the lessons we've talked about, Bill. Tell them a little bit about what we've studied so far.
Well, so far we've studied 18 laws. And we started with the law of the lid, which says, your organization can only grow as far as your own personal leadership ability.
Yeah, it's kind of like I said, here's your lid, here's your potential, or where you're at, actually.
Yeah, where you're
not
at.
Your potential, but this is where your leadership ability is at. And the rest of the team and the organization's doing this. They're trying to rise up, wanting to rise up,
but we're holding them down.
But the leader holds them back. So.
And then we went into the law of influence, which we mentioned earlier, that leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. And then we went through the other laws all the way up through the law of sacrifice last week.
Yeah.
Or the week before last.
And it was a great lesson too, because too many times leaders don't understand what they're going to have to sacrifice before they get into it. Sometimes leaders get stuck in a spot where they just have to emerge because somebody has to take over. And that's a leadership role that sometimes births a leader. But a lot of times people with natural leadership ability will kind of rise up. And it doesn't mean they stay and want to be that leader. But their natural ability causes them to take over and handle a situation, get things moving, solve the problems, get the team moving. And then sometimes they back out. That's natural leadership ability. Now, anybody can develop their leadership ability. Some folks say, "I'm not a leader." Well, like you said, we have influence. If you're a parent and you have children,
you're a leader.
By default. Doesn't mean you're a good leader. Doesn't mean you have good positive influence. But someone is influencing your children, good or bad. So you want to be a good influencer in the lives of your children. If you're a pastor, or if you're a business owner, if you work on a team that doesn't have a clear-cut set of positions and titles in place, then that's where a lot of times that natural leadership ability starts to come up, because the people trust them. It goes back to the 5 levels. They give that person permission to lead even without a title. So this week, like I said, is the law of timing. But before we get into it, I want to talk to you about how these lessons are designed. If you haven't already been tuned in, hopefully you have. If you haven't, you're in for a treat. First thing we do is we learn about the law. We become aware of this principle. A lot of times we're living it out or avoiding it and not even knowing we are. If we understand the principle, then we can begin to live it out, which is the second phase. Yeah, and once we begin to live it out, and our influence increases because people begin to trust us, we begin to have the ability to not only increase our capacity, but we begin to lead others to it, and so they can increase their capacity. That's what it's all about, individually.
That is.
To raise up a leader, to raise up a leader. So that keeps your organization and your team sustainable for the future. If a lot of times, if a leader drops out, the clear-cut leader, and that leader hasn't trained and equipped other people to take his or her place, it leaves a vacuum, doesn't it? And a lot of times, organizations collapse and fall, or they have to start over, which is a lot of wasted time. So if we learn how to raise up other leaders, we can do that. And we'll talk about that a little bit in this lesson here, the law of timing. Bill, why don't you take us through the learning phase? Help us become more aware of the law of timing.
Okay, in the law of timing, it basically says when to lead is important, is what to do and where to go. And timing is often the difference between success and failure. And that a real good lesson can be drawn from Hurricane Katrina back in 2005, when it was Friday evening when they knew that it was going to make landfall near New Orleans. Well, on Saturday morning, the parishes around New Orleans ordered a mandatory evacuations. But the city of New Orleans, their mayor, Ray Nagin, he didn't order any evacuations. And then a guy from the National Hurricane Center called him Saturday night and scared him to death on the telephone. So Saturday morning, he ordered an evacuation. But Saturday night, he ordered the evacuation, but he only ordered voluntary evacuation.
Yeah, I remember that.
And it wasn't until Sunday morning, less than 24 hours before the hurricane was going to hit, that he told the people to get out of New Orleans. And he said, if you can't get out, which, they don't have time to do that.
Nobody can get out in 24 hours.
Right.
That's the size of a city. Yeah.
And so he tells them to go to the Superdome. Well, we all know what happened at the Superdome if we followed that story. I mean, it's been 13 years already. It doesn't hardly seem possible, but they weren't ready to go.
Yeah.
So, the wrong action at the right time. But I mean, it was the right action, but the wrong time. So it was a mistake.
And I also remember in that he told the folks to bring their own food and water.
Yeah.
He didn't even make plans to get the place stocked up for the worst case scenario.
Treat it like a camping trip.
Yeah.
Well, how many people in a city the size of New Orleans know what it's like to go camping?
Yeah, that's true.
But the wrong action at the right time is a mistake. The right action at the wrong time is a mistake. But you need the right action at the right time. And someone else that can tell us about timing was Winston Churchill. And he described it as there comes a special moment in everyone's life, a moment for which that person was born, that special moment when he seizes or will fulfill his mission, a mission for which he is uniquely qualified. In that moment, he finds his greatness. It's his finest hour. And if you look at Winston Churchill's career, he knew about time.
Yeah, he sure did. And he didn't sit on his haunches waiting on things to happen. He went and made them happen. He was talking about Hitler for years before this happened. He was prepared in his mind what he was going to do if he had the opportunity. And then the opportunity came. And he began to lead. And he changed the world. He changed the world. What kind of world will we live in right now if Nazi fascism had taken over the globe?
Well, when Churchill was called upon, there was only a handful of democracies left.
Yeah, it was true. It was fascism and communism was just spreading across the globe. And we'd be living under dictatorship today without the rights and the freedoms that we have. We got a lot of problems in our country, but we have freedom.
Yeah, we
have freedom to think how we think about it too, don't we? And we see through social media, we have the right to say pretty much what we want to say. Sometimes we'd rather not hear it, but at least we have that freedom. And that's if that was taken away from us, where would we be? We'd be under a dictatorship. So Nagin was something else about Nagin. I remember about that story when it come down to responsibility. What did he do about responsibility, Bill?
He passed it off to the federal government. He said, it wasn't my fault.
Yeah.
Well, and there's mistiming too, because the federal government didn't order anything until about Thursday or Friday of the following week to get help in there. And the Red Cross was Friday before they had permission to bring relief supplies in.
Yeah, it was just a horrible situation. Thousands of people lost their lives. And the biggest part of them happened right there in New Orleans.
Yeah.
The other cities were prepared. They took action, began to move people out. Even animal shelters moved their animals out. But in New Orleans, there was a lot of animals lost too.
Yeah.
And then the whole time he played the blame game, the deflection, because of his lack of proper timing and his concern. He just didn't take it serious enough. So a leader who's responsible for a lot of people has to pay attention to the law of timing. It's critical. All right, now we talked about timing, and it's pretty. The term itself is pretty plain. Good timing, bad timing, perfect timing. And if we have perfect timing, it's like when Churchill said, if you're prepared, and then it hits, that could be your finest hour. That's why we don't wait till a disaster or wait till an event happens to get prepared. If you're waiting until the event happens, it's too late. You're not prepared. So that's why we prepare. That's why we learn. That's why we grow, because things are going to come. It's often unforeseen things. And if we're prepared and growing, then we're better equipped to help people. So every time a leader makes a move, there are only 4 possible outcomes. And we're going to talk about living it a little bit. The first outcome, the wrong action at the wrong time, equals disaster. It means you just blown it. There's no other way to. And this was the Nagin story in New Orleans, wasn't it, Bill?
Yeah, the voluntary was wrong.
Yeah, that's exactly
And it
right.
was the wrong time for it.
Yeah. The right action, number two, is the right action at the wrong time brings resistance. Now, I've experienced this, and we talked about this a little bit last night in class, didn't we, Bill?
We did.
A lot of times a leader will have a great idea and be processing this idea, but they keep it to themselves until it's time to reveal it. And we don't give our folks time enough to embrace it and understand it. And a lot of times, as a leader, we think that our team's bucking us or fighting us, and they are somewhat, but they have reason to be because they haven't had the time to process it in their own minds and work it out in their own minds how it's going to happen. So sometimes we got to take a big plan and break it up in little pieces and give people time to wrap their mind around it. Give them time to take ownership of it.
We need buy-in.
Yeah, then we need the buy-in, which is one of the laws we talked
Right.
about. Yeah. And proper timing requires some things. First, it takes understanding. Stephen Covey said this, and it's so powerful. It will change your relationships. It will change your life if you apply this principle. He says, seek to understand before seeking to be understood. Our human nature is we want people to hear us. We want people to know our story. And there's nothing wrong with that. But as we mature and grow, we have to understand that the people we encounter feel the same way. And if we ever want to build that bridge and connect with them, we have to take time to seek to understand them, to find out where they're at. Where are they at in their lives? Where are they at in their personal growth? And if we do that, we become less judgmental of them.
Yeah, we've got to understand that people don't choose to be wrong.
Yeah.
We don't choose to be wrong. But when we are wrong, or when someone else is wrong, from the perspective we have at the time, we're right.
Oh, yeah.
So if we don't understand why someone thinks they're right, we won't be able to help them see where they're wrong.
Yeah. And, that means coming back, slowing down, taking a pause, and getting ourselves in their shoes and say, tell me what you're thinking.
Empathy.
What are you feeling? What's this cause? What feelings do you have with this? It's so important to not disregard people's feelings because they're real.
They are.
Their perception may not be completely right and totally accurate, but that's what they're seeing, which produces a feeling, and those feelings are real.
Mm-hmm.
And if we trample on people's feelings, that's the first sign that people will tune us out. And people will remember very little about what you said, but they'll remember forever how you made them feel. And that's so true.
That is.
Have you ever experienced where someone made you feel less than valued?
Yeah, and I can't remember what it was over.
Yeah,
but I can remember the feeling.
And it kind of makes you feel this way toward a person.
And you feel it, and I have that feeling then. Anytime I want to come up to that person again,
Mm-hmm.
if it was a bad experience, I'm going to shy back because I remember that feeling.
Yeah. We're not perfect. We can't make everybody feel like $1 million, but it should be our goal.
Yeah.
That should be our goal, is to add value to people, make them feel valuable because they are valuable. And if we can do that, we can build more positive relationships and increase our influence with them, not manipulate them.
No, it's just an idea of increasing our trust.
Yeah, increase the trust.
They can trust us not to make them feel bad.
Yeah. And you know what? If I'm a person in a place of influence, and this is a whole nother lesson, but if I'm a person in a place of influence and I don't feel valued and I don't have a good, healthy self-esteem, it is impossible to make someone truly feel valued, isn't it?
It is.
So the importance of growing on a personal level is to increase your own confidence and self-esteem so that you can give that away. You can't give away something you don't have. So, and I've had leaders and people in my life who didn't really feel that way about themselves, and they passed it off to me, not intentionally. They didn't intentionally say, I'm going to wake up and make Dave's life miserable today, make him feel like a worm. But there was times that happened because they weren't mature and hadn't grown. And a lot of times their timing was off. And a lot of times, in the law of timing, as being a manager in a retail world for years, there was times that, you want to pass out praise. And when you pass out praise when somebody's upset, sometimes it's not well received. If we pass out the praise way down the road, sometimes it doesn't have the same effect. So a lot of times we got to really have a certain level of emotional intelligence to know when to pass on that praise, and when also to pass out constructive criticism. We have to be emotionally in tune with our folks. So Covey was right. Seek to understand before seeking to be understood. So find out where your folks are at. Next is maturity requires patience. I've talked about we've prayed for patience, and then it's like, well, I wish I hadn't prayed for patience because, man, it feels like everything's falling apart. But it's the only way to grow is to develop patience. Next is confidence, and this comes with developing your skills and your natural intuition. We talked about this in another law of intuition. As we grow our skills and we become in tune with a certain area or lane that we run in life, whether it's leading or in a compassion area, or when I say leading, I'm talking about administration because we can lead in all those areas.
Mm-hmm.
But if I'm in the compassion industry or if I'm in the teaching industry, my confidence will grow if I focus on that, and my intuition will improve, and that will help me make better decisions and interact with people better. Next is decisiveness, and this means good leaders, great leaders, make their minds up very quickly, and they change it very slowly. Now, a weak leader or an immature leader takes a long time to make a decision and changes it very quickly, and that doesn't develop confidence, does it?
No.
And when we get like that, folks lose confidence in us too. So we need to be decisive, but not impulsive. Being a quick decision maker without thinking things through and using your intuition will cause a lot of bad decisions. And then some folks won't admit that it was a bad decision.
And sometimes you have to make a quick decision, but implement it more slowly.
Yeah, that's true. All right, next is experience. If you lack it, get experienced counsel. If we're working on a situation and we're trying to figure out when to do something and we don't really know, don't make that impulsive decision. Get some counsel from somebody who's already had it. I remember having several store managers that were in my inner circle, and if I got to a situation, I'd call them up, and they may not had some of the same skills that I had, and for whatever reason, some managers I had more respect for, but there's sometimes that some folks were really good in a certain area, and I'd say, hey, man, can you give me some advice in this area? I've got, and man, they were willing and, more than willing. They were excited that someone called them to ask for that counsel. So don't be afraid to ask for counsel if you're having trouble making the decision. And next thing is preparation. We alluded to this a minute ago. Do your homework. Study the situation and your people. Don't come in each morning half-baked and don't have a plan. That's why leaders have to sacrifice some of their own time to think things through before they get there, before the situation even arrives sometimes. So that means do your homework. Failing, a lot of times, is just really a lack of preparation.
Yeah.
And that's really what it is. Well, Bill, that's a little bit about living it. We've talked about learning it and living it. Tell us a little bit more about how to lead others to the law of timing.
Well, leading others to the law of timing, part of it's, it's modeling and teaching. And, teach others the law of timing, that, there is a time for things. There's time to hold back on things. And we have to practice urgency and patience at the same time. We have to be patient with people, but we have to, say, these are things that need to be done. This is when this needs done.
And that, that's really a management function. Is we have to, and it's a leadership and a management function. Let me clarify that, because sometimes we can come across as being patient when we're really not urgent. And everything has to have a timeline. It has to, you develop SMART goals, and you have to set timelines and make sure they're measurable and attainable and timely. But sometimes we because of our lack of confrontation or conflict, we don't develop that sense of urgency in our people. I want you to take enough time. I don't want you to take all the time to make this decision. So there's a difference between teaching people patience and developing that sense of urgency, because there needs to be both. So that's a good point, Bill.
And, remind yourself and others that there's time and place for everything under the sun. In farming, there's time to reap, there's time to sow, there's time to plant, time to harvest. Sports, if it's a running play, you don't throw the ball.
Yeah.
If you're on defense, you don't try to shoot.
That's a prime example. I was watching the All-Star game the other night, and one of the All-Stars had an open line to the basket. When the game was very close, one basket was decided, he passes it and gives up the opportunity to make that layup. And you think, man, that's bad timing. He should have shot that one, but we're human, but hopefully he'll learn from it. I think he will. He's professional, so I think he will.
And, in business, time to sell, there's time to hold. Business has cycles, and they tell us, when people are scared, that's when you get greedy. And then when people are greedy, that's when you get scared.
I think Kenny Rogers talked about that a little bit.
No,
didn't he?
yeah, the gambler.
Yeah, you got to know when to hold 'em, know when to fold 'em,
Right.
know when to walk away, and know when to run.
And in leadership, it's when do we hire? When do we fire? When do we train, or when do we promote?
Yeah.
And when do we speak? When do we hold our peace? I mean, a lot of times it might be the right thing to say, but saying it at the wrong time can create those bad feelings we were talking about earlier.
Yeah, that's right. So we've talked about, being aware of the law. We've talked about how to live it out. And we've talked about how to lead others to it. Mostly being a good model, isn't it?
That's right.
Because people are going to, what we do speaks a whole lot louder than what we say, doesn't it?
If you're doing something different than you're saying, you're teaching something else.
Yeah, you're teaching them to not do it. So
right.
That's so true. So let's talk a little bit before we let you go about an action plan. Let's talk about 2 or 3 things that you can do to improve and put it into play right now. Because we're talking about it today. We've talked about 18 laws before, but I challenge you to, when you tune into these lessons, get your notepad. If we say 1 or 2 things that triggers an idea or a thought or something you think you should do, write it down and put it into play immediately. Because if you don't, more than likely you're going to lose it. A lot of distractions. So I'm asking that you just take time to reflect and think and put it into play, because this action plan says, first off, need to assess your past failures and successes and determine how you used your timing. Was it a timing issue? I shared a story last night about painting the employee's break room. Of course, it was the wrong color and everything, but it was bad timing too. And I kind of paid that price for that for quite a while until we got that break room painted. And I learned to get my team's feedback before I make those kind of decisions. What's the second thing we need to do, Bill?
You find you a mentor or a coach to help you, utilize better timing when you move forward.
It's too many times we have teachers, coaches when we're kids and we're going through school, and then we maybe go to college and we get some tutors and we get some friends to help us with these things. But sometimes we get to this place where we think, all right, I've arrived. It's all on me now. I've got to make every decision. And then we're too proud to ask for help. Now, high-functioning executives that are successful have a personal coach or a mentor, don't they? They pay for those services.
They have, a lot of them have several.
Yeah, some of them have several, one for each part of their life.
Yeah.
Because they understand that, it takes balance to live a full and fulfilling and successful life. So they hire professionals to do that. So there's nothing wrong with us coming saying, hey Bill, I'm having trouble in this particular area. Can you give me some advice? Can you help me? Give me your thoughts here. It's as simple as that sometimes. And the third thing is be responsible and accountable to grow in the area of timing. And like we said, if you're starting out or if your timing's been bad over the period of time, get some counsel. Reach out and get some help. Sometimes, experience is not the best teacher. We've only got so many days on this planet, in this body. But the experience of others will save us a lot of time. And that's critical. I think it's a whole other lesson.
That is.
Yeah. Well, thank you for tuning in today. Now, next week, we're winding down on this series, but we're going to come back and do it again here in a few weeks. But what is lesson 20? The law of explosive growth. And this is what it's all about. Sometimes we get some explosive growth. And to take a church, for example, you can have a revival and have a whole lot of folks come into your church and your congregation grows quickly. Or we can have a brand new business, and we get all these new customers that come in really quick, and we think that's explosive growth. Well, it is, but to maintain that, we got to apply the rest of these principles, don't we?
That's right.
Or they'll fade off, and it's a whole lot harder to get that momentum started again in the bill.
Yeah.
So we'll learn more about explosive growth next week. But in the meantime, thank you for tuning in. We had a contest with this one here too, didn't we? I had 4 folks respond to the promo that I sent out last week, and they actually received a free digital teaching and a PDF workbook on my website that is called Becoming a Person of Influence. And the first 6 folks that will like this post and share this post and send me your email address, I'm going to give you access to that too. We'll continue the contest until we get 10 folks to get that free teaching. The teaching is about 3.5 hours. It's 11 lessons. We designed a PDF workbook that you can follow along with the videos. And I want to make sure that 6 more people get that lesson. So send me a shout out, send me your email, but you got to like the post and share the post here so we can get this word out to other folks. So thank you for tuning in.
Thank
Have a
you.
great week.